You ever just stare at a sentence totally frozen by three tiny little words in, on, and at? Yeah, you're not alone. But what if I told you there's a really simple visual way to get them right pretty much every single time? Let's get into it.
So let's just kick things off with a classic. Should you meet someone on the corner or at the corner? This one little question, it shows you exactly why these words can drive us all a little crazy. And look, if you find this stuff confusing, you are in very, very good company. These prepositions can feel totally random sometimes, but there's a secret, a simple little geometric trick that actually makes sense of all the chaos.
Okay, so here it is. This is the key. Forget grammar for just a second, and I want you to think like a geometer. We're going to map these words onto three really simple ideas: a specific point, a flat surface, and an enclosed space. First up, we've got at. I want you to think of at like a laser pointer. It's marking a single, specific point in space. You're at the entrance, you're at the bus stop, you're at a specific address. It's all about pinpoint precision.
Next, there's on. Now, on is all about surfaces. A book is on the table. A picture is on the wall. Maybe you live on the 5th floor. Just think of it as anything you can lay something on top of or, walk along.
And finally, in. In is for any enclosed space, basically anything with boundaries. You're in a room, you're in a box, you're in a car. And this works for bigger areas too, like in a city or in a country. The rule of thumb is, if it surrounds you, you're probably in it.
So, this is where it gets really cool. These ideas, they're not separate. They're kind of like those Russian nesting dolls. We can use this geometric model to zoom in from a huge general area to something very, very specific. And you can see that flow perfectly right here. You start big, right? Inside a huge area. You're in a country. Then you zoom in a little closer to a surface inside that area. Now you're on a specific street. And finally, you land on the exact point. You are at the address. See that? From a volume to a surface to a point.
Of course, this is English we're talking about, so there are always exceptions. Those tricky little cases where the rules seem to just break. Let's go ahead and tackle a few of the most common ones. All right, let's circle back to that first question. On or at the corner? Well, the answer is you can often use either one, but at becomes the better choice when you get more specific, like let's meet at the corner of Pike and East Broadway. So while both can be right, the context adds that extra layer of precision.
Oh, here's another classic. Vehicles. Why are you in a car, but you're on a bus? Well, it actually comes right back to our geometric rule. We tend to think of a car as a small, private box that we get into, but public transport, like a bus or a train, feels more like a big platform that we step onto. Makes sense, right?
And sometimes the right answer just depends on which side of the pond you're on. In American English, you do things on the weekend, but in British English, it's at the weekend. So hey, if you get this one wrong, you can just say you're speaking a different dialect.
Okay, we've covered the rule, we've covered the exceptions, but now we get to the real secret, the key to truly mastering these words. It's not just about the location, it's about the meaning you create with them.
So take this sentence. Seems pretty simple, doesn't it?
If you tell someone you're at the hospital, it just means you're at that general location. You could be visiting a sick friend, maybe you're a doctor just starting your shift.
But now, watch what happens when we change just one tiny word.
Whoa! The entire meaning shifts. Now you're a patient. You've been admitted for a medical reason. That one little preposition, it's literally the difference between just visiting and being the one who's sick. That's powerful. Here's another fantastic example. If you say, I was at the movies, everybody knows you were watching a film, eating some popcorn, but if you say, I was in the movies, well, now you're a star. It's the same place, but a completely different relationship to it, and it's all defined by that one tiny preposition. So, how do we pull all this together? Well, here is your simple 3-step toolkit for finally mastering in, on, and at. Here are your 3 keys. First, always start with that geometric model. Does it feel like a point, a surface, or a volume? Second, get familiar with the common exceptions, like the ones for vehicles. And third, and this is the most important one, always listen for the deeper meaning. Context is your ultimate guide. Because ultimately, while these rules are a fantastic starting point, the real key to mastering prepositions is just immersion.
The more you read, the more you listen, the more you'll develop a natural instinct for which one just sounds right. So the next time you're reading a book or listening to someone speak, just pay a little extra attention to these tiny words. You'll be amazed at the big stories they tell.